Hi all, my name is Ryan and welcome to my channel What the Pop, where we discuss pop culture in general and Buffy a lot. The usual spoiler alert. I may talk about things in these analyses that relate to future plot points, so if you haven't seen all of Buffy at least once and you don't like spoilers, I suggest you like the channel, then come back once you have seen it all. Today we continue our look at Season 2 with my review and analysis of Episode 22, Becoming Part 2. Although this video is focused on Part 2, I will talk about Part 1 where it's relevant. A plot summary. As the police try to arrest her, Buffy sees Xander unconscious and asks about Willow. The Snyder Troll tells the cops if there is trouble, Buffy's behind it. Buffy takes down the cop and she flees. She sneaks into the hospital and finds Xander. Willow is in a coma. Cordelia arrives, admitting she just ran. They realise Giles is AWOL. Giles wakes up and jealous intends to torture him to find out how to awaken the Cathler. Yay for chainsaws. The police tell Joyce that her daughter is a wanted felon, known for violent behaviour. Buffy finds Whistler at Giles's place. He's pretty much useless. A policeman tries to arrest Buffy and Spike takes him down. Yay Spike. Spike likes this world, doesn't want it to end, and agrees to help take down Angelus. Joyce shows up and Buffy plays a mean triangle, drums. A vampire appears. Buffy dusts it. Joyce is confused as hell. Buffy reveals she's a vampire slayer. Xander tells Willow he loves her. She wakes up and asks for Oz. Her head is head-sized. Joyce recognizes Spike. She hit him with an axe. Get the hell away from my daughter. Spike and Buffy come to an agreement. He and Drew walk in aid for help, but only if Giles lives. Joyce tells Buffy if she leaves the house to never come back. Buffy leaves anyway. She has an apocalypse to stop. Again. Willow decides to try the curse again. She has resolve face. It looks like regular face. Giles is mocking Angelus. Spike suggests another way. Buffy retrieves a sword, runs into Snyder. He expels her, then calls the mayor to tell her the good news. Drew gets inside Giles' head and appears to him as Jenny. He reveals the blood used must be Angel's. Buffy asks Whistler how to use the sword. He says Angel's blood opens it, Angel's blood must close it. She tells her she has nothing to lose. He says she still has one thing. Buffy runs into Xander, tells him to get Giles out. He says Willow said to kick Angel's ass. Xander is a dirty liar. Buffy cuts off a vamp's head. Angelus says she's outnumbers. Spikes get out of the wheelchair and hits him. Angelus successfully removes the sword and he and Buffy fight. It looks as though Angelus has the upper hand. Buffy has nothing left except herself. It's more than enough. She catches the sword with her bare hands, turns the tables and kicks his ass. Willow gets taken over and the magics to restore Angel's soul get channeled through her. As Buffy goes to send Angelus to the Hell Dimension, his eyes glow and his soul is restored. Angel is confused, but the vortex is swirling. Buffy knows what she has to do. She tells him to close his eyes, kisses him, then runs him through with the sword. He is sucked into the Hell Dimension. The vortex closes and a Cathler is dormant once more. Buffy weeps. Buffy's clothes are gone. Joyce finds a note. The Scoobies gather, hoping Buffy will show. Buffy watches from a distance, then gets on a bus out of Sunnydale. And we all need a hug. Like Part 1, Becoming Part 2 was written and directed by Joss Whedon, and I think it is one of the best episodes of television ever written. It has an IMDb rating of 9.5. The only episodes that are rated higher are Hush, The Body, and Once More with Feeling, which have 9.7 ratings, and equal to The Gift, which also has a 9.5. While Once More with Feeling is my favourite episode of Buffy, Becoming Parts 1 and 2 are very close behind it. The reason that Season 2 is so beloved and such a strong season of Buffy, particularly the back half, is that between Innocence, Passion and Becoming Parts 1 and 2, you have some of the best television ever written and acted, all in half a season of a show that the Emmys barely acknowledged. The problem with Season 2 is that the outstanding episodes are interspersed with less outstanding episodes, like Bad Eggs and Go Fish. So like we did with the last episode, let's talk about the bad things in this episode. And there's only really two. First is the obvious stunt actors in the fight at the end between Angelus and Buffy. You can clearly see in multiple shots that it isn't David Boreanaz and Sarah Michelle. It doesn't detract from the fight too much, however, or the moment of Buffy's me right in the middle of that fight. The other thing I don't like is some of Whistler's dialogue, which manages to be both corny and cringy, but that's pretty much Whistler through and through. He was, after all, merely a convenient plot device for these episodes. We never see Whistler again in the TV series, though he does appear in the comics. Apparently, though, in the first draft of Angel, the series, Whistler was supposed to appear there, though he was subsequently replaced with Doyle. In the last episode, we had one of the big fan controversies, which was whether Buffy should have left to face Angelus or not. Here we get another of those controversies, probably the biggest in the fandom. Was Xander right to not tell Buffy that Willow was going to try the spell again? Where do I stand on this controversy? Well, Joss justified it by saying it was for tactical reasons. I find this reason to be utter bullshit. While I don't think it made that much difference to the outcome of the final battle, apart from Buffy's complete surprise at Angel's reinsoulment, I think it fueled her decision to leave, and it speaks volumes of Xander's character in these early seasons, and it does not speak favourably. First, by not giving her that information, it took away Buffy's agency. Buffy has proven that she is quite capable of making the right choice to save the world when it has to be made, and proves it in this episode. She doesn't need Xander or anyone else interfering in those choices. In a show that supposedly supports a feminist view, it is shocking how often Buffy has her agency taken away by men. This is not the first time Xander does it, and it won't be the last. The second is that he's a massive hypocrite. He judges Buffy for dating Angel because Angelus, not Angel, is a killer. Angel lost his soul unwillingly. He became Angelus and killed people, and Xander is all kick his ass. And then Xander turns around and dates Anya. Anya was over 1,000 years old. She had killed, tortured, and maimed countless men in that time. She caused the Russian Revolution, and she chose to become a vengeance demon. When he leaves her at the altar, she chooses to do it again. And even after she has killed 12 frat guys, Xander is all, please don't hurt her, it's Anya. His hypocrisy is what I find most appalling here. People who defend Xander say he didn't do it out of jealousy, that it was strategic and Angel deserved to die. Joss himself said he didn't do it out of jealousy. But when you take into account his hypocrisy around Anya, you are left with only two reasons. One, he was jealous of Angel. Two, he really hates vampires. And I think it was probably a combination of both. But to say that his jealousy of Angel played no part and that it was entirely strategic, on that I can't agree, and as Oz says in Doppelgangland, I'd call that a radical interpretation of the text. Now, I've seen this episode probably 30 times at least, and that's no exaggeration. And without fail, the ending has me in tears every single time. From Christoph Beck's Buffy and Angel love theme, appropriately titled Close Your Eyes, the acting from David and Sarah Michelle in that moment, and then Sarah McLachlan's Full of Grace kicking in, it just breaks my heart. This is the modern day version of a tragedy, and Joss Whedon writes them so well. Despite Buffy thwarting Armageddon, both she and us are left utterly broken. As Guru Arg says at the end, I need a hug. Yet like the show manages to do time and time again, in the midst of all this drama we get moments of great humour too. Spike and Joyce develop somewhat of a friendship over time, and he is genuinely sad when Joyce dies later, and most of that starts in this scene.
Have we met?
You hit me with an axe one time. Remember, get the hell away from my daughter.
Oh.
This scene could have been really corny, but the way James Masters delivers the lines makes it very funny. And Kristen Sutherland's awkwardness, at first the silence, and then Spike's revelation that she had hit him with an axe just adds to the comedy. Another of my favourite funny moments is this one.
Drusilla?
Honey?
We are finished here, dogs.
Sorry. I was in the moment.
It adds a moment of creepy levity that is very on brand for Drew, after Giles has been pulled through the emotional ringer with Drew pretending to be Jenny. Then you have the interactions between Spike and Buffy. Now, the chemistry between James Masters and Sarah Michelle was evident from his first appearance in School Hard. But their characters riffing off each other, their barbs towards each other, and their truce also provides for some comedic gold. Take this, for example.
Who is this man? Who are you? Are you okay?
Mom! I'm okay.
Buffy, terrible things have happened. What were you doing?
What, your mom doesn't know?
Know what?
That I'm, in a band. A rock band with Spike here.
Right, she plays the triangle.
Drums.
Drums, yeah. She's a hell on the old skins, yeah.
And what do you do?
Well, let's sing.
You know,
And I'll talk more about their similarities and differences, as well as Angels and Spikes later on. And I think my favourite funny line in the midst of danger is from Giles, why he's being tortured.
In order to be worthy, you must perform the ritual in a tutu. Pillock.
All right, someone get the chainsaw.
A pillock is British slang and is basically an idiot or a moron. And while I knew what it was prior to Buffy, it was this line that made it my non-sweary insult of choice. Of course, I'm Australian, so it's fairly rare that I don't just straight out swear. I want to highlight just how outstanding Sarah Michelle is in this episode. I mean, she is always outstanding, and everyone in this episode is great. But this is one of those episodes that you can point to and say, she does everything here. This episode has her go through a plethora of emotions, and she does action and comedy and drama, and she knocks them all out of the park. If people were to ask me for an episode to display Sarah Michelle's acting talent, this is probably the one I'd recommend along with The Body. Whistler says something in this episode that I completely missed the importance of, and I don't know how I managed to miss it so many times, given how many times I have seen this episode. He says,
"One blow sent them both back to hell. But I strongly suggest that you get there before that happens. 'Cause the faster you kill Angel, the easier it's gonna be on you."
don't worry about me.
I only just realised that Whistler knew Angel would get his soul back. He sees the future, and he was telling Buffy that it will be easier on her if she kills him quickly before that happens. Finally, I don't think this is a controversial opinion, but I do wish that Xander telling Willow he loved her and her waking up and asking for Oz had been the end of any thought of Willow and Xander as a couple. It would have marked a nice ending by having her finally moving on. While them getting together in season 3 happened so we get brilliant episodes like The Wish, I never liked that plot point from a storytelling perspective or from a metaphorical or thematic analysis perspective. While Becoming Part 1 was all about the circumstances that make us, Part 2 is all about the choices we make. We may all be victims of circumstance at times, becoming things we never wanted to be, but the measure of who we are is how we react, how we move forward, and the choices we make when we can, because that is what defines who we really are. This is the philosophical heart of Buffy the show, Buffy the character, and its creator, Joss Whedon. The choices we make define us because they determine who we become, and the importance of those choices have been highlighted throughout Buffy. Buffy became the Slayer by circumstance, but it has been her choices that have made her a hero. It's her choices that have made her a different Slayer, and it's those choices that will make her a legend. Her choice to face her destiny despite it predicting her death in Prophecy Girl told us the sort of person Buffy is. Her imploring Ford to make a better choice in Lie to Me spoke of her conviction to this philosophy. As I highlighted last episode, Season 1 was about Buffy's metaphorical journey to adulthood by embracing the Slayer within. The first half of Season 2 was about the maturation of the woman, of leaving behind her childhood as she moves into adulthood and embraces love, sex and passion. The second half of Season 2 is about dealing with the consequences of those actions. In Prophecy Girl, it was Buffy the woman that saved Buffy the Slayer. Her relationship she had built as a woman meant she had friends. It meant that Xander was there and able to give her CPR when she drowned. Last episode, however, it was Buffy the woman who condemned them by not taking out Angelus when she had the opportunity. And that brings us to the decisions she makes in this episode, to who she becomes. Buffy is put into situations here where she continuously chooses the Slayer over the woman. Right at the start of the episode, she is being arrested by the cops. Buffy is innocent, and the cops would eventually determine that, but she chooses to attack the cop and flee, because she can't save the world as the Slayer while behind bars. She chooses an alliance with Spike, because it's the best way to stop Angelus from waking a Cathler, despite Drew having killed her friend. She chooses to walk out when given the ultimatum by her mother, because her duty comes first. So when alone, seemingly defeated by Angelus, it should be no surprise that she embraces the Slayer completely.
That's everything, huh? No weapons, no friends, no hope. Take all that away, and what's left?
Me.
In When She Was Bad, Buffy posed the question to Angelus.
Think.
You think you can take me?
What?
Oh, come on. I mean, you must have thought about it. What would happen if it ever came down to a fight? You, vampire, me, the Slayer? I mean, you must have wondered.
It should come as no surprise here that when Buffy truly embraces who she is, when she becomes the Slayer, she absolutely kicks his ass. When she truly embraced the Slayer in Prophecy Girl, the Master had no power over her, and she defeated him easily. In Halloween, after experiencing what it was like to be weak, when she embraces the Slayer again, she kicks Spike's ass, someone who has killed 2 Slayers. In Innocence, she couldn't bring herself to kill Angelus, but she still beat him. Repeatedly, we have seen that when Buffy chooses to embrace the Slayer, she is an absolute force of nature. If we look back through Buffy's actions, when absolutely necessary, Buffy has always chosen the Slayer over the woman. From the very first episode, even when Buffy said she was retired, she still chose her duty over a normal life. She was still carrying around a stake. In Prophecy Girl, despite being told she would die, she put duty first. In Bad Eggs, when given a task by her mother, she chooses duty over completing that task. Her mother says she wishes Buffy was more responsible, but Buffy does not lack ownership of responsibility. She has always tried to do the responsible thing. But as the Slayer, Buffy sees it as her responsibility to act as guardian of this world. It is what is expected of her in the role. She could have refused that role, ignored the vampire threat, but as I said in Welcome to the Hellmouth, Buffy is a moral person, so will generally always choose the Spider-Man motto. With great power comes great responsibility. All of this culminates in her biggest choice: save the world and kill the man she loves, or condemn the world and let him live. Given her past choices, it would seem a foregone conclusion as to what Buffy would do. But this choice is different in one significant way. Whistler said,
I can deal. I got nothing left to lose.
Wrong, kid. You got one more thing.
that one thing left was the subject of another episode: her innocence. For a show that quite often demonizes sex and punishes Buffy for it, what it made perfectly clear is that Buffy never lost her innocence when she lost her virginity. She remained an innocent. Joss reinforced that, stating it explicitly in his commentary. But now she's faced with a choice that will take that from her. In order to save the world, Buffy must send a human soul to a hell dimension. And not just any soul, it is the soul of the man she loves. So while it seems like a foregone conclusion, it is a choice with significant ramifications for her. In Nightmares in season 1, we saw that one of the things Buffy feared most was becoming a monster, and she felt that fully embracing the Slayer would make her one. Given what we learn about the nature of the Slayer power, she's not wrong. Giving into that desire would make her a brutal killing machine. We see in future seasons when Buffy is indulging that instinct to hunt, and next season we'll see someone who does give into that desire in faith. And that is the choice Buffy now has to make. It was one thing to be the Slayer and be the woman, but now she must choose between them. And in one of the most heart-wrenching scenes in Buffy, she chooses the Slayer and sends Angel to hell. We already knew she would. She had already made that choice earlier in the episode with the coming out metaphor with Joyce, when Joyce asked her if she'd tried not being a Slayer. The whole point of this scene with its coming out metaphor is to highlight that Buffy has to choose between being her authentic self or denying that truth. And Kendra already advised her on this.
You always do that.
Do what?
You talk about saying like it's a job. It's not. It's who you are.
And Buffy says to her mother,
It's because you didn't have a strong father figure, isn't it?
It's just fate, Mom. I'm the Slayer. Accept it.
so Buffy is given the choice. She denies who she is and ignores her authentic self. She stays and is welcome. If she is true to who she is and embraces the Slayer, she is exiled. Now, almost any kid who has ever come out will tell you that it's never a choice, that you can only deny who you are for so long. The coming out metaphor is in no way subtle, but is used here to highlight once again that existential philosophy of choice and consequence, which is the whole theme of Buffy. In this episode, Buffy is compared and contrasted to Spike. Spike too must make choices that would seem to be at odds with other vampires. We've already established way back in School Hard that Spike, like Buffy, was a breaker of tradition, that he doesn't conform. So while the rest of the vampires are trying to get humanity sucked into a hell dimension, it makes sense that Spike doesn't want that. And the main reason for that is that Spike is a very different sort of vampire. Spike still retains some of his humanity. We saw that with the judge, who felt it in him. So while other vampires may be happy to get back to a hell dimension, Spike likes his humanity and everything that brings with it. It may torture him at times, but he wouldn't trade it for anything. It offers a nuanced contrast with Buffy trying to retain her humanity and not completely give in to the Slayer within. This comparison, this similarity, makes it interesting at the end to see the choice each of them make, because they essentially have the same choice. A Cathler has been awakened and everything is going to be sucked into a hell dimension. And the only way to stop that from happening is to beat Angelus and use his blood and the sword to close the vortex. When Spike is leaving with an unconscious Drusilla, he sees that Angelus is about to kill Buffy and he has a choice to make. Choose the woman he loves or save the world. We've already discussed Buffy's choice when having to make the same choice. But Spike makes the opposite choice. He chooses the woman he loves. The world be damned. The events of this season have brought Buffy to the next stage of her journey. In season 1, she had to embrace the Slayer side of her in order to grow up. In season 2, by allowing her sexual desire to grow and giving into it, Buffy let go of her childhood and started her journey to adulthood. In the back half of season 2, she had to deal with the consequences of that desire and the loss of innocence. She trades one desire, that of a normal life, with another, that of being the Slayer and all that entails. But as I said before, Buffy feared becoming a monster, and now fears that's all she is. So she gives it all up, the Slayer and the woman, when she leaves her friends, her mother, and her Watcher. She has chosen not to deal with the consequences and therefore set her journey, the integration of her Slayer aspect and the woman, that growth to adulthood, aside. Poignantly, in an episode entitled Becoming, her journey to adulthood, to what she will ultimately become, has been completely derailed. Buffy is becoming no more. Next season, her final year of high school will be a journey of definition and discovery. Buffy has given up who she is here. Next season, she will reclaim that self and start to define exactly who she is in that most existential of way through choice and action. We've seen that Buffy herself, as Manister Hand, has completely embraced and then abandoned that role, becoming the weapon that fate would have her become to save the world, then leaving it all behind. But by the end of this episode, all of Buffy's aspects have developed and changed, becoming new versions of themselves. Comparing Buffy to a Cathler, the Dark Hand, you have active choice versus passive inaction. Everything that happens to Buffy here, everything she does, in keeping with the existential theme, is a result of active choice, whereas a Cathler is a recipient of other people's choices. He does nothing actively himself. Even the opening of the vortex is something that just happens as he awakens. Like Dawn in season 5, he appears to be nothing more than a key to a hell dimension. At the end of part 1, Willow, Buffy's spirit, was in a coma. Xander, her heart was broken. Giles, her mind was missing, taken and captured by Angelus. But by the end of Becoming part 2, they've all evolved. They've all become something greater. Xander, Animus, the heart, is the most obvious metaphor and portent of what's to come here. Buffy, since innocence, has been nursing a broken heart, yet Xander, that metaphorical manifestation of her heart, has remained strong, even in the face of overwhelming odds, such as his confrontation with Angelus in the hospital in Killed by Death, and standing up against the other aspects in Becoming Part 1. His arm getting broken at the end of Becoming Part 1 is an obvious signal of Buffy's heart state and where it will be by the end of Becoming Part 2, but it also tells us a fair bit about the choice Buffy will make. Though heartbroken, Buffy still does what needs to be done. What's also relevant is that Buffy's heart will remain scarred by this season. It has a permanent effect on her relationships going forward. Compared to Angelus, the Dark Heart, we see that the Dark Heart, with its single-minded obsession, brings about its own destruction. Willow, as Spiritus the Spirit, goes through a similar transformation to Buffy herself, but unlike Buffy, it isn't entirely an active choice. Willow chooses to do the spell, to curse Angelus with his soul once again, and Giles has detailed the danger in that she will become a channel for the magic rather than the person casting it. We see that happen. Willow, as a representation of Buffy's spirit, is infused by something external, a something else that makes her more powerful and opens the strength of her spirit. This obviously mirrors the Slayer power that infuses Buffy and gives her her strength. That strength of spirit is in full display in Buffy's subsequent choices, her killing Angel, her leaving, the things she believes she needs to do, consequences from the choices she made. When compared to Drusilla, the dark spirit, we see Drew loses her advantages here. Previously allowed to run amok while the dark mind was too weak to control her, she is once again tamed and controlled. She has been a fitting metaphor to Buffy's sexual desire all season, so it comes as no surprise here that when Buffy has to choose between the world and the man she loves, her sexual desire is unconscious and gone. It plays no part in her decision. Giles, as Sophist the Mind, represents everything that Buffy has been through this season. In this episode, he is tortured but stands resilient against Angelus' interrogation. Giles mocks him, a final defiant stand in a seemingly hopeless situation, reminiscent of Buffy mocking the Master in Season 1. Giles represents the strength of Buffy's mind, and his being deceived by Drusilla going through his heart reveals Buffy's weakness too. It is a warning to Buffy that she too cannot give in to her heart when humanity is at stake, a warning that Buffy heeds when she sends Angel to hell. Giles, like Xander, is still standing at the end of this maelstrom, despite being broken and succumbing to Drusilla's deception. When compared to Spike, the Dark Mind, we see them contrasted, defiance and determination versus cunning and deception. This event will have ramifications for both in the future. This is the first time that we see Guru Arg altered to reflect the episode. For my favourite quote, well, I think this is the single best moment in all of Buffy, so despite the fact we've already seen it, I choose this one.
That's everything, huh? No weapons, no friends, no hope. Take all that away, and what's left?
Me.
Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell. It helps the channel a lot. You can also support the channel through Patreon. If you disagreed with anything I said or have anything to add, please put it in the comments below, and I'll see you next video.